Welcome to the Living Wholehearted podcast, where we're helping leaders live with integrity.
Whether you're a mom or a CEO, you're a leader, and how you lead matters.
Well, I am excited because we're going to talk about big emotions today, specifically with children and teens. If you are a parent or you've raised children at any point in your life, you understand that emotions can be all over. We talk about emotions as being like a train, and what that means is they're constantly moving. Always moving. So we're going to talk about how do we as parents really help our children develop healthy emotional skills, how to regulate, how to actually attune to our kids and not dismiss the power of emotions, because long term, it really does affect how they become adults, engage in their marriages. And we all know, if you are involved in any sort of leadership in an organization, how emotional IQ is really important part of organizational health. So with us, we've got some of our own therapists from Living Wholehearted joining us, and they are really not only amazing women, but they've got some expertise to bring to the table. They are play therapists. So I'm going to have them introduce themselves. Tell us a little bit about you, Sarah.
Well, hello. My name is Sarah Dangaran. I was first exposed to play therapy in grad school, and I remember thinking, this is so silly. I'll take this course because I have to. And then by the end of it, I was sold. I was totally sold into this method of being with children, how play therapy is a developmentally appropriate form for kids to do therapy. Talk for them, to expect them to sit down like you would with an adult and talk out issues that's unfair. So I like to use the expression, if toys are the words, then play is their language. And so yes, I live locally in the area. I've been doing play therapy for about, 4 or 5 years now. Mm-hmm. And I have my own little kiddo who's 2, who I sometimes practice on. And I have married to my husband, Ryan, married 9 years. And I actually have a little one on the way as well in about a month here. So big transition for us right now in our lives. And yeah.
So glad to have you, Sarah. Okay, so Roshana, tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, I am Roshana Grile, and I work with kids and families as well, just like Sarah said. And I've always known that I've wanted to work with kids since high school, and I did lots of babysitting and nannying in the summers in between college. And then I have a undergrad degree in elementary education, and I taught for several years and just was tuning into the growing desire to work with kids in a different avenue. I remember specifically one year I had a little girl in my class come in on a Monday morning, and she was in tears. And talking with her, I figured out that her family had gotten evicted from their apartment over the weekend unexpectedly, and she couldn't find her only pair of shoes. And I remember thinking in that moment, gosh, how am I supposed to teach her skills in doing addition in math class, or how to read this beginner reading book if she is so upset about what happened over the weekend with her shoes. And I think at that moment I wanted to get into a field where I could help families and kids come up with those skills to deal with big feelings and know what to do with them. Mm-hmm. And so then I pursued the degree in counseling and had specific training in play therapy, and immediately knew this was the right fit.
That's amazing. Tell us a little bit about you personally, Roshana. What stage of life are you in?
So I've been married to my husband for 10 years, and we have 2 little ones. We have a 5.5-year-old son and a 3-year-old daughter. So we are right in the thick of the big emotions. I have been there when my daughter's been screaming in the grocery store many times. Mm-hmm. And I've had lots of occasions where I've asked my son to do something. He looks me right in the eye and does the opposite of what I just asked him to do. So I understand exactly what those moments are like, because I have been there and done that with my kids.
Yeah, and something about kind of a myth about counseling is that all of a sudden our kids are going to magically start behaving and obeying every response of a parent. And that is not what therapy does, because we have the mix of humanity and we have developmental ages. And no matter how skilled we are as clinicians, we have our own little real lives. But we do have some tools in our tool belt. And so that is part of the training. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Sarah, tell us a little bit, why did you become a counselor? Like what drew you to this field?
Yeah, I think I could talk about, the podcast could be about this answer exactly. But I think, one of it goes back to my own story and some of the pain and hardship I faced in my own life. And I actually had a really bad experience with counseling when I was 14, 15 years old. And I don't think there were people in my life that could, mentors or helpers or that could respond to me in a way that was really healing when I was going through a lot of pain. And so just growing up and as I'm getting older, I realized I love sitting with people. Those hardships did develop the strengths and skills I do have today. And so, just realizing I want to sit with people in pain and I want to get the tools and resources to help heal them in whatever hardship they're going through and bring about redemption for their own stories.
Absolutely. I want to give you an opportunity, Roshana. Is there anything else you want to add to why you became a counselor? I know we heard a little bit about it already.
I think just what I had said earlier was working with kids in a classroom setting, you're still teaching them so many things, and they're learning social and emotional skills on top of academic skills. But I just wanted to dive in a little bit deeper with kids and families in a different setting and not be as driven by the standards that I had to meet as a teacher to make sure that my kids accomplish those academic standards by the end of the year and be able to like Sarah said, sit and journey with someone to sit and journey with someone in their pain and their story is such an honor and a privilege, and to be part of that healing work that the Lord is doing.
Yeah, and we love our teachers, and many of them feel very ill-equipped right now in the classrooms. We are seeing such a shift happening for so many reasons with the behavioral issues that are coming up with children, and a lot of teachers are saying it's completely different in the schools than it was even 10 years ago, and a lot of reasons are contributed to the digital age, the food we eat. There's just a lot of contributing factors. And that's really not what this podcast is about, so let's move on. But the reason I became a counselor, honestly, I didn't want to be a counselor, maybe similar to you, Sarah, and that I actually had a stigma about counselors that was off. I don't know what I thought, but I just thought they were weird, to be honest. And I didn't want to be in that category. So I was drawn more. I wanted to be a doctor, and I wanted to actually be an OB and deliver babies. And then I realized, I think that was after the Huxtables, Bill Cosby show, and they were a lawyer and a doctor, and they were raising their children together. And I realized that as aha. I was like, that's TV. That's just not going to be a reality for me to be able to be an OB and do the life that I wanted to do with my children. So changed that direction and went into ministry. And in ministry, it was wonderful, but it was really hard because I couldn't get into the depths. There was a skill set I didn't have in how to go deeper. And so that's where I stepped into counseling as well. And one of the things that I was drawn to was marriage and adults and relationships. And I remember in grad school, a professor saying that a therapist who works with adults is not necessarily great with children, but someone who can work with children and do play therapy is going to be a fantastic therapist with adults. And I went, well, goodness, I'm going to nail that. So I ended up getting into play therapy too, and found this an enormous wealth of resources that has helped everybody across the playing field, whether it's a child or a 45-year-old adult. So let's talk about what play therapy is. What are some of the things that are key to play therapy that you would want our listeners to understand?
So a lot of times when I first meet with parents before I've met with the child, I'm describing what my approach is to working with their child. And as Sarah described a little bit earlier, our belief is that play is a child's language and toys are like the child's words. So while they can sit and have a conversation with words with us, they can sit on the couch and do that. They're much more comfortable when given a set of toys that they can play with to express their feelings, to process their experiences and their thoughts and what they're going through. So developmentally, play is natural for kids. You don't have to teach a child how to play. It's
so true.
I remember a few years ago watching, I think it was a documentary called Babies, and it followed 4 different babies in different countries around the world. And the interesting thing was that none of them, regardless of their culture and how they were being raised, none of them needed to be taught how to play. They played with whatever was around. For the baby in an African country played, with the sticks and the rocks that were around. And it was just really interesting because you could just see that it was just innate and within each baby. So in our office, we have a play therapy room, and it's filled with toys like puppets and a dollhouse and dress-up clothes and cars and trucks. We have a couple sand trays where kids can put the toys in the sand. And it's really amazing just to see the process unfold, because when given the opportunity in a safe and welcoming and warm atmosphere, kids will play and they'll use those toys to act out and create some safe distance from what's actually happening in their own lives and their own stories. And then we as the therapist take the role of a follower in that play while we're tracking what they're doing. We're engaging by making statements about what we see and, making statements about wondering what's going to happen next or what it might be like to be in that sand tray next to all those toys that the child put in there, and just being a part of it as they're allowing us to do that.
Yeah. And I think, that was a great summary, Roshana. And one thing we also try and do is teach parents these skills as well, because we're not just in the room like babysitting your child, just watching them.
That is
passively.
a myth.
Yeah, that is a myth. We're very intentional about how we're responding, what we're saying, building on their strengths, empowering them. And we're relying on the inner strength of the child. So I'm not peppering them with a million questions, getting them in their heads and confused and feeling like, oh, I have to have an answer for this. We're just saying, I'm here with you. I see you. I care and I understand. Because we want the child to feel accepting of themselves. So we want to also teach parents and coach parents as much as we're able to use these same methods and tools at home so they can be change agents in their own environment. So I know that's kind of a passion for the both of us. So we can hopefully work ourselves out of the job, because parents, they have so much more influence than we do. And so that's another big thing I think we try to do within the practice.
It's so exciting. Because most of the time listeners don't know what they don't know and literally are desperate by the time they get to our offices. And so tell us a little bit about what are some of the common issues you are seeing in your offices these days, whether they're children or teens. What are parents coming to you with?
I think a big one I get is nothing is working. I just need them to calm down. I want them to be this way, and it is a moment of, oftentimes they've been stuck for a while. And so it's this panic almost, and they've been in a pattern or a rut of behaving with their child in a way that's been unhealthy and unpleasant. And they don't have a positive experience with their child sometimes, or teens. And so that's where we come in and hopefully help build that positive relationship back up, where we're coaching them and helping them learn how to take care of themselves too, and understand what's coming up for them as they're interacting with their kid. And then two, how are you responding to your child? What are you saying? How are you speaking into their life? How are you helping them regulate? Right. And so, just trying to give them the right tool for what they may be experiencing at home. But I hear a lot like nothing is working and they're in really big emotion, big meltdown mode. And so how to kind of navigate that.
Absolutely. I think majority of the listeners can relate to that at some point. And there can be that place of feeling a bit ashamed to think, I need a counselor now, I'm failing. And actually, that's one of the healthiest places we could go to model to our children that it's okay to get help. And to be honest, being therapists outside of that system, we don't react the same way to your child, right? We don't have the same attachment or the same patterns. So we can kind of see it from a different lens. And just having a reset, like you're saying, a way to have somebody coach us through, and then have a safe, neutral environment to reform new patterns and new ways of relating, and hopefully change it to more of a positive relationship rather than that exhausted. Both the parent and the child are pretty exhausted, except the child doesn't know anything more than except to blame themselves. Because all children are egocentric and think that everything, whatever's happening in the home is their fault. So we're doing a lot of rehelping parents to even change the way they see their kids with their facial expressions or the words coming out of their mouth. So I am so in awe of the work that you guys are doing. Roshana, what are some of the things that you're seeing with your clients?
I would agree with everything that Sarah just beautifully said. I think a lot of it is helping come alongside supporting parents in knowing, equipping them with some maybe additional tools of what to do with those big feelings and how to not overlook, but maybe look through the annoying behavior that they're feeling at their wit's end that their child is doing, and see kind of what the underlying need of the child is. Like, what is the child asking in this misbehavior that feels so frustrating to the parent in the moment? I'm also seeing a lot of anxiety and a lot of anger, which ties into those big feelings too. And then there's also just changes of life situations, such as parents getting divorced or a death of a loved one, or moving to a new school or a new state, new city, and just supporting families as they navigate those big changes.
Yeah, and we forget how children are impacted by those life changes. Again, children aren't saying, I'm really disappointed right now. Instead, they start misbehaving or they get antsy and their bodies look hyperactive. There's all these other symptoms, and then we blame the behavior rather than looking at the undercurrent. There's that principle in play therapy we pull from Dr. Gary Landreth, and the principle is the white water, that if you're a river rafter and you're going down the river, you'll see there's white water, but that white water is actually a cue to these undercurrents that are happening underneath. That often with children, particularly 24 and younger, the brain is still developing, and there is so much that is sensory oriented, the way that they're picking up from their world. And so that undercurrent is hard to get to. Like you were saying earlier, Sarah, that with words, we have to kind of go through the back door with play. And it looks different with a little 3-year-old than with a 15-year-old. Describe that. What might you do play therapy wise, or even play as a parent with a 15-year-old versus a 3-year-old?
I think with teens, developmentally, they might not gravitate as much towards playing with actually toys. But I think it's so important for parents to tune into what each of their teenagers are interested in, specific activities or interests that they might have, ask questions, and, allow them to be the teacher in those situations. So that just builds like a basic connection and strengthens the relationship I think that parents and teens can have. And I think through that, the teenager then realizes like, hey, like I am special. Like my parent is paying attention. They're pursuing me. They want to know like who I am developing into what person I'm developing into. And I think then once they have that trust there, then there's ways to connect in an even deeper level about, feelings, thoughts, experiences that they've had at school or with friends, or any questions that they might have about what's happening.
That's really good. So I'm hearing you say to really tune in to listening and asking good questions and allowing that teen to have their own voice. And what's fascinating, and as a parent of young teens, we want to do a lot more lecturing because the thinking just doesn't make sense half the time, at least in our world. But if we listen really well, engage in their world, things they're interested in, and that can take some energy as a parent. We often think that they're more independent and more capable, and so we pull back rather than pressing in and saying, tell me about your world. And it looks like they're pushing us away when really they still desperately need that relationship and interest. And I once heard a friend of mine describe her teen as a prickly porcupine. And she's like, I'm just loving the porcupine. And so to come in and to be able to take some of the pricks from those spines, to be able to say, this isn't really about me. This is just the stage. So to find those interests and then to tune in. What about a 3-year-old? What does it look like to engage their little world with play?
Yeah, I think unlike how you might respond to a teen with a 3-year-old, they're 3, to 5, 6, 8. They might be more willing to engage in those toys. And I might approach that from just allowing them to direct their play and be in their world more, and I enter into it. And I think what's important to me is to communicate to them, like, I see you and I care, and you are valued. You are important. Already at that age, that I think they're feeling shame that they have to come to this strange room with maybe this strange woman, and feeling already a little bit of a problem. And so I absolutely don't want to communicate more to them that, yeah, something's wrong with you. Let's get to the bottom of this. No, I just want to be with them and communicate to them that you are okay, and what you're feeling is okay. This is normal. And yeah, that is hard, or that is scary, or, oh, that makes you so happy. Just really being with that child and seeing them in all of who they are. And so, yeah, I think that's how it looks different than a teenager, where there might be more questions or curiosity. With the smaller kiddos, I'm really just entering their world and allowing them to be accepting of themselves, to reach that, feel that they feel accepting of themselves.
It's so good. But what both of you are saying is so powerful, and I'm going to connect it to a greater principle, is that we're wounded in relationships and we're healed in relationships. That we're made with this, especially little kids, they're looking to their primary caretaker to say, do you like me? Do you see me? And they're not asking that with their words. It's innate. And then, if I sit with a 65-year-old, their primary view of themselves comes from how their parents engaged them. So we're not trying to put pressure. I mean, that is common. The parents think, oh, great, the counselor's blaming me. However, we're trying to raise the awareness to say, you're significant.
Yes.
And we want to equip you to take that role seriously. And so part of what you're doing as a therapist is tuning in, because you don't have all the baggage that a parent has, the stress of work and all the paying the bills. And but if we can pass that on to a parent to say, model, I want you to do what I'm doing. See how I'm noticing they're happy today. They're feeling sad. My youngest is still playing quite a bit, and I hear her all the time when she has downtime, Mommy, you want to play? And my tendency is to say, not right now. I have to get the dishes done. Not right now. Let me finish this email. And because I'm a play therapist and I have that voice in the back of my mind, I hear this little click that says, she's asking for you. Do you see me? I need you, Mommy. And so often I'll say, I have to finish this email. Give me 5 minutes and then I'm all yours, and I'll give you 20 minutes. And so setting those parameters to be on her timeline is more powerful than the therapeutic room of us sitting with them. However, there's a lot of times that us parents are way too stressed or going through our own stuff, like a divorce or a huge transition, that we can't give that to our kids for now. So we're able to fill that in for a time. As we wrap up this first session, there's so much we can cover, and we're going to do that in part 2. But I want to end with this question, because I can imagine the listener going, okay, give me something, give me a tool, give me a very practical tool. How do I start engaging my kids in a healthier manner? Define healthy connection between a parent and a child, kid or teen. I think it doesn't matter in this case. If you had a magic wand and could give it to every parent, what would you give them?
I think we've kind of already touched on it already, but speaking to the heart or spirit of your child. So seeing beyond those behaviors, seeing beyond their tears or their tantrum, and speaking to their true identity and highlighting and underscoring that for them, no matter, if they are 3 or they're 17, 18, about to leave your house. These children and teens need to hear who they are, what their true identity is, especially in this cultural climate that we're in, where it's, be more, show more, make more, look a different way, just having your parent speak to those strengths of, oh, you are so patient, you are so kind and creative, you are so loyal. Kids need to hear that. They need to know that you see those special things about them, and that they will, they want to live that out, those characteristics out. And they need that in a world that's really harsh and doesn't see those things or doesn't value those things as much as your weight or your paycheck. And so I would say every age needs to kind of be encouraged and supported in their own unique selves.
Oh, well said.
Love it. Well said. Yes. Roshana.
That's hard to follow. Something that I feel like I've been learning in my own personal parenting journey is to have and practice patience. And I know that sounds really kind of cliche, but I think patience with myself as a parent, knowing I'm not going to get it right every time, and that is okay. In the words of Dr. Gary Landreth, who's the play therapy guru that Tara mentioned earlier, he said, the most important thing is not what you do, but what you do after what you've done, highlighting the importance of coming back and saying, I blew it as a parent and I'm so sorry. Do you forgive me? Because we're modeling for kids in that statement that we're taking ownership for our imperfections and our mistakes and where we're falling short when they needed us. And it gives them permission to not be perfect as well. So I think I'm working on patience with myself and giving myself grace and knowing that this is a journey and I'm growing together with my kids. And then certainly patience for me dealing with them too, and knowing that I'm teaching the same lessons of what to do with big emotions every single day. Like sometimes I think to myself, we just talked about this 5 minutes ago. Like we just said, no, you can't hit your sister when you want a toy that she has. And just having patience with that and reiterating, the connecting piece with the empathy, like, wow, you're so mad right now, but it's not okay to hit. Let's use some words and let's calm down and then come back and solve the problem together. So I think those two pieces, and also that it's not too late to start using these tools. Because sometimes I think at least for me as a parent, when I hear something new that I have not been doing with my kids previously, I'm like, oh shoot, I blew it already. I'm already past the age of my kids where I can use this. But it's not too late to try new skills and try new things, and your kids will recognize that and they'll grow with you.
That is so good. Both of you, amazing and good places to end. And there's so much more. So we're going to do a part 2 that you can get on the Courageous Girls. If you support Courageous Girls, there'll be access to this second part where we're going to get a little more deeper. But if you're interested in actually learning more about helping your children with big emotions, here's some next steps. You can pick up the book Courageous, Being Daughters Rooted in Grace. It actually is great for your sons and daughters, but their play therapy principles are woven in throughout the book. You can come to Living Wholehearted, or you can find a play therapist in your area if you're listening to another part of the country. You can also register for the Encourage gathering on March 13th and 14th and come to Sarah and Roshana's breakout, where they're going to get really practical in helping equip parents, particularly moms who will be there. And I love that principle. It is not what you do, but what you do after what you did. It's never too late. So even if your children are adults and you have grandkids, there's something profound in being able to come alongside your grandkids, and it's healing for your children, your adult children, that you really blew it. To be able to come to your 45-year-old son or daughter and to own something and to say, you know what, I was angry when you were a kid. Or I didn't really know you and I did not give you words of affirmation and affirm you. That really is profound, no matter how old we are, and can be really healing. So wherever you're at, if you don't have kids yet and you are planning or long to have kids, guess what? You've got a lot of years to prepare well. And all three of us were play therapists before we had kids, and it has helped us, but man, it's hard to parent well. So just to remember grace, that God is with us and he's using us right where we are. And those children were chosen for you on purpose. So try to delight in them a little bit today. So glad you joined us and excited to continue this dialogue. Make sure you subscribe to the Living Wholehearted podcast, or send a review so that others learn about us, or send this off to some friends who maybe need some encouragement today. Thank you for joining us in being a leader committed to shrinking the integrity gap between the values we espouse and the values we actually live out in practice.